Research Director at the Independence Institute, Mr. Dave Kopel. Dave, thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, I'm looking here at a story. Senate President John Morse plans to introduce a bill today, I guess.
It's in.
It's in now.
Has been introduced.
All right, holding manufacturers and sellers of guns he doesn't like, the so-called assault weapons, liable for the violence that occurs with guns. He says he has found a way around the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act.
Yes, and by the way, his bill also repeals Colorado's similar law, like the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. So his bill would open up sellers of all firearms to being sued for various reasons. But the bill is Senate Bill 13-196, and it has a bizarre and very broad definition of assault weapon and imposes strict liability for anybody who for manufacturers and sellers. And his theory in which he gets around it is the Lawful Commerce and Arms Act says that in general suits against gun makers and sellers are banned, but there's an exception for an action in which a manufacturer or seller of a qualified product, the gun, knowingly violated a state or federal statute applicable to the sale or marketing of the product. And so his statute says that when you sell a assault weapon, you have to use the highest standard of care, which is undefined. But he says and then if you don't do that, then you can get sued. So that's the theory under which it.
Yeah, I love it.
He claims it complies.
I mean,
with the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act.
He actually quotes. There's a quote here: "Establishing the highest degree of care will be up to the jury."
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a law that's just written to make it easy to sue people.
Well, yeah, that is the point.
I realize usually they're not quite so open about it.
Well, and of course the odd thing is he claims he's complying with the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, but it says you were knowingly, for the federal statute, you have to be knowingly violating something. And here there's something. Well, how could you knowingly be violating it? Because you don't even know what the standard is till some jury decides.
Well, that's an excellent point. I mean, as a matter of fact, Dave, that seems. I'm trying to think of the counter argument here. I can't come up with one. I mean, that really does seem to defeat the purpose of this bill, doesn't it?
The purpose of this, true purpose of this bill, is to give the moderate Democrats in the state Senate something to vote against, so the rest of the extremely oppressive gun laws that Senate President Morse is pushing can get through. It's ultimately a throwaway, is my conjecture about what's going on here.
I think this is a ruse then, a little bit of a rope-a-dope.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah, and you attract all the opposition to this. That means there's less opposition to other stuff, and it gives moderate Dems a chance to say, well, I voted against this bill, and this was the worst one, and they would be right about that. But then hopefully you can get their votes on other anti-gun bills.
Where do you see this argument right now? I mean, I've seen some stories indicating Governor Hickenlooper is he said he had a couple of comments over the weekend about, I'm not really sure about this, and then I guess his office came out on Monday and said, no, he's still okay with the magazine ban. I mean, it seems like the anti-gunners who thought this was going to be a fait accompli over in the Senate and over onto the governor's side didn't realize just how ticked off Coloradans were going to get by the vote in the House.
Well, and that's what we got to keep it going. And I think one of the important things to communicate to the state Senate and to the general public is how bad these bills are. There's one thing to say, if you ask people, are you for universal background checks? Yes, that's easy. But that's not what the bill in Colorado does. This bill, they're thinking like, two guys meet via Craigslist and they're complete strangers to each other and one sells the other a gun. Do you want a background check on that? Yes. The bill that passed the Colorado House goes vastly further than that. It literally means if my wife wants to borrow my gun, I can't lend it to her. It means I can't teach the NRA gun safety classes because being an NRA certified instructor is, to teach NRA gun safety, one of the things you do long before you ever go to a range is you have something in a classroom where the students learn how to handle guns, usually the instructor's personal guns, under the supervision of the instructor, and there's no ammunition by anybody, including the instructor, in that classroom. And you can use like dummy loads to practice how to put ammo into a magazine, how to put the magazine into the gun, all these kinds of things, how to press the trigger. Under the bill that passed the House, if I have students in a class that I'm trying to teach, I've got to go through a background check every time I hand a gun to a student, and then the student has to go to put me through a background check, costs $20 in each direction every time the student hands the gun back to me. So it's to cripple gun safety training in the state, among many, many other abuses. Likewise, they have this emergency thing where supposedly you can give somebody a gun in emergency for protection against a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only condition under which you can do that is the same standard at which you could shoot somebody. So if a woman says to her neighbor, there's a stalker who's been harassing me, and he says he's going to come over sometime in the next few days, can I borrow your gun to protect myself and my kids? The person who has the gun, the neighbor, can only lend that gun if the threat is so dangerous that the woman would actually be justified in shooting the guy on the spot.
So basically, wait until he shows up, give me a call, and I'll come over and toss the gun to you.
Yeah, wait until he shows up. If some guy is harassing you by telephone and making threats, and then you happen to run into him at the mall, it doesn't mean you can pull out a gun and shoot him right there. But that's the standard under the new universal background check law, is the victim can only borrow a gun from a friend when the threat is so imminent that she would be legally justified in using deadly force at that very second. By which case, of course, it's too late to go and borrow somebody's gun.
Yeah. I mean, Dave, look, this is buffoonery. I mean, is what this is. I mean, what you're describing here, you're right. This is, even if you support gun control, if you support this, I mean, you're really whacked out. These laws, it sounds like a lot of them, Dave, don't stand a chance of standing up in court. So why pass something that is going to get struck down? You're going to
A, from your lips to God's ears on court. But B, we've seen that whenever you challenge the government in a court case, you're always going in as the underdog, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how Obama imposed gun registration on long gun sales in the southwest border states. That's pretty clearly illegal under federal law. And the D.C. Circuit, the trial courts have let him get away with it. So just because a law is unconstitutional doesn't mean courts are going to throw that out. As among other people could tell you, everybody who saw suffered under these Jim Crow laws for many years were pretty flagrant violations of the 14th Amendment, but yet they stayed on the books for a very long time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. So, Dave, what's the timeline looking like for votes over on the Senate side? Do you know?
Committee hearings start Monday, and they are going to be fast-tracked. The point of this is to blast these through the legislature before people find out what's in them.
All right. Well, listen, Dave, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. We'll continue to spread the word, and thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.